Good evening, and thank you all for watching tonight. My name is Heidi Sherman. I'm proud to represent Stowe in the Vermont House, and it's an honor to moderate tonight's forum on leadership, civility, and unity with these three incredible governors. Our very own Governor Phil Scott from here in Vermont, Governor Charlie Baker of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland. It's no secret that our nation feels divided. It seems more polarized than ever. So tonight we'll be focusing on how we can overcome this, how we can come together in our states and as a nation and get back to doing the people's work with respect and civility. Before we get into the questions submitted by Vermonters, I want to take a minute to introduce our three guests. Governor Larry Hogan spent nearly his entire career as a small businessman. Fed up with high taxes, politics as usual, and decades of a one-party monopoly, he started Change Maryland, the largest nonpartisan grassroots citizen organization in state history. In 2014, outnumbered in party registration by more than 2-to-1 and outspent by more than 5-to-1, Governor Hogan pulled off the biggest upset in America to become only the second Republican governor elected in Maryland in 50 years. Since taking office, Governor Hogan has set an example for the nation on how to reach across the aisle and achieve real bipartisan common sense solutions. He eliminated a $5.1 billion deficit and cut taxes 4 years in a row. Under his leadership, Maryland produced one of the greatest economic turnarounds of any state in the nation. Governor Hogan also accomplished innovative healthcare solutions and made historic investments in education, transportation infrastructure, and in protecting the environment. After 4 years of economic success and bipartisan progress, in one of the bluest states in America, Governor Hogan was overwhelmingly reelected in 2018 to a second term, making him only the second Republican to do so in the entire 243-year history of the state. His cross-party appeal is evident in polls, which consistently shows an overwhelming majority of all Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. Nearly 80% of all Marylanders approve of the job he is doing, which is the highest of any governor in Maryland history. He recently served as chairman of the National Governors Association, leading the nation's governors during the COVID-19 pandemic. National rankings consistently show Governor Hogan as one of the most popular governors in America. Thank you so much for being here tonight with us, Governor Hogan.
Well, Heidi, thank you very much for that much too generous introduction, but I greatly appreciate it. Look, I'm just very proud to be here with two of the governors who I most respect in America today. And I'm happy to be here, particularly with Governor Phil Scott, who I really want to make sure that Vermonters get out there and do everything they can to help him get reelected, because I think he certainly is one of the best governors in the country. And he embodies all the things you were talking about that you were ascribing to me. I think he represents as far as bipartisanship and the way he goes about his politics. And so I'm happy to be here with Governor Scott. I'm also just as thrilled to be here with my other good friend, Charlie Baker from Massachusetts. And, those things you were saying about me being a popular governor in a blue state, these two guys are even more popular, I think. So the three of us, I think we must be doing something right. We agree on so many issues, and we also agree about how we should go about a more civil dialogue and about how we should do something about the broken politics in America today. So thank you for having me. I'm just honored to be with you, Heidi, and with both of these great governors.
Thank you so much, Governor. We appreciate it. Governor Charlie Baker was sworn in for a second term as the 72nd governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on January 3rd, 2019, after a first term focused on moving Massachusetts forward through bipartisan, results-driven leadership. Governor Baker has used public-private partnerships to spur economic development, reform the state's regulatory environment, and delivered critical tax relief by doubling the earned income tax credit. Ensuring Massachusetts continues to be a national leader in education, Governor Baker has made historic investments in K-12 education, increased support for vocational and technical schools, and expanded early college opportunities for high school students. Governor Baker has put Massachusetts at the forefront of fighting the opioid and heroin epidemic, doubling spending on prevention, education, treatment, and recovery, and signing two major bills that have served as models for other states. Confronted with the challenges of rising energy costs and a changing climate, Governor Baker has taken nation-leading steps to diversify the Commonwealth's energy portfolio, safeguard residents, municipalities, and businesses from the impacts of climate change, and secure progress toward greenhouse gas reduction targets. Governor Baker has spearheaded long overdue reforms at the MBTA that have led to significant improvements to operations and finances, and put the T on track to spend more than $8 billion on infrastructure over the next 5 years to improve riders' experience. Prior to his election, Governor Baker was a highly successful leader of complex business and government organizations, serving as a cabinet secretary to both Governor William Weld and Paul Cellucci, and leading Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare as CEO from the brink of bankruptcy to one of the nation's highest ranked healthcare providers. Raised in Needham, Governor Baker and his wife Lauren reside in Swampscott and are the proud parents of their 3 children, Charlie, AJ, and Caroline. Welcome, Governor Baker.
Thanks very much, Heidi. I'm just going to reiterate what Governor Hogan said, which is it's terrific to have an opportunity to chat a bit tonight about what it's like to govern as a Republican in a blue state. But mostly what I want to say is how much I appreciate the work that Phil has done in Vermont. Phil, I don't know if you've checked the data in the last day or two, but I think you have the lowest rate of positive COVID cases per 100,000 population in the United States. And I know how hard you've worked on that issue, as have all 3 of us over the course of the past 8 or 9 months. And I just want to say to my colleagues, to Governor Scott and to Governor Hogan, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. You guys are among the very best.
Thank you very much, Governor Baker, again. And finally, to my friend, Governor Phil Scott, who, as Vermonters know, was first elected in 2016 and re-elected in 2018. Since being sworn in, he's been focused on growing the economy, making Vermont more affordable and protecting the most vulnerable. And I, for one, have been so appreciative of his leadership. He's instituted fiscal discipline and demonstrated that with good government and clear priorities, you can invest in critical services, economic development, education, and more without raising taxes and fees. In 2017 and 2018, he ensured the state didn't raise a single tax or fee without cutting services for the most vulnerable. Thanks to this discipline, we've been able to invest more in the areas that are important to Vermonters, again, without raising taxes. Governor Scott has been a champion for creating better opportunities for Vermont's kids, securing a 30% increase in our state's investment in early care and learning, and putting us on a path to universal after-school programs. We expanded our hub and spoke model, eliminating the waiting list for treatment for opioid addiction and keeping it low so people can get treatment when they need it. And we've been able to provide tax relief for working families and our low and moderate income seniors by eliminating the Social Security tax for low and moderate income Vermonters and through comprehensive tax reform. Governor Scott's been the right leader at the right time here in Vermont, especially during this pandemic. We're all proud of what he's accomplished, and we need his vision for our state more than ever as we rebuild. So I'm very much looking forward to his reelection in 12 days. Governor Scott.
Go away.
Here, here.
Well, thank you so much, Heidi. The people of Stowe are so fortunate to have you as their voice in Montpelier. And I also want to thank my friends, Charlie and Larry, for being here as well. Massachusetts and Maryland are lucky to have 2 of the best governors in the country leading them through these difficult times. And I really appreciate all the help you've given me over the years and your guidance. And I look forward to our conversation tonight because I too believe we're at a critical point in our country, and it's important that we come together as a country because there's far more that unites us than divides us, and we just have to lead and make sure that we have our voices heard. So thank you again, Heidi.
Oh, thank you, Governor, and thank you again for your leadership throughout. So we're going to get on to some questions now. And again, thank you all for doing this. This is a great opportunity for all of us and all of us here in Vermont to hear. So you're all Republican governors, as you mentioned, in 3 of the bluest states in the nation, yet you've all been reelected by wide margins. And all 3 of you have consistently earned high marks from your constituents. Tell us a bit about how you've done it. And Governor Baker, why don't we start with you?
Well, I guess I would start by saying that one of the things we tried to do for the past 5 years is focus on the things that are most important to people, which generally speaking, I don't view as fundamentally partisan issues. trying to help people build strong communities, trying to make sure they have a job that they believe has a future, trying to make sure that schools are in good shape, and that we're doing things like focusing on the opioid and the heroin addiction issue, and responding in many respects to the many issues that people raise as we do these jobs is really not a partisan thing. And the second thing I would say is most people want their public officials to get along. Now, you never know that if you just paid attention to what's on social media, because it looks like on social media that there are two camps and they're miles away from each other. And there are two camps that are miles away from each other, but they do not represent the vast majority of the voters and the people in any community, including Massachusetts. And I think one of the things people appreciate about the work that all three of us have done is we've basically, adopted the old John F. Kennedy maxim, which is a good idea is a good idea. It's not a Democrat idea, Republican idea. It's just a good idea. And we've tried, I don't really care where a good idea comes from. And I'm perfectly happy to give credit to the folks on the so-called other team if they come up with a winner. And I think much of the work we've done, and you heard it in all three of those introductions, all three of us have been able to build bipartisan coalitions on the issues that matter most to the people we serve. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
Thank you. How about you, Governor Hogan?
Well, as usual, I couldn't agree more with what Charlie Baker just had to say. And I would say that the three of us would not have been elected in our states if we weren't focused on the issues that people care about, regardless of their party affiliation, and that they didn't think we were the kind of people that were willing to reach across the aisle and work with the other side. And what we've been focused on for the nearly 6 years that I've been governor is just as Charlie said, finding that common ground where we can all stand together and being willing to compromise, being willing to listen to the other side, and to not care which side of the aisle the idea comes from. If it's a good idea, to work together towards solving the problems. And sometimes there's so much partisan noise and shouting going on, and people seem more interested in winning arguments or scoring points or demonizing the other side, instead of, I think, the three of us try to find that consensus and to avoid the extremes of either party, and to try to just come up with bipartisan common sense solutions, which, as Charlie said, I think is what the vast majority of people in Vermont, in Massachusetts and Maryland, and across America really want. There's a handful of people that are on the far left or the far right, but most of us just want to see our elected leaders fix the problems and come up with real solutions. And so I think that's what the three of us have focused on, and why the voters have rewarded us with sending us back in to continue to represent them.
That's great. Thank you, Governor. And Governor Scott?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with my two good friends. I've served in the minority my entire political career. I've never served the majority. During my first 10 years in the Senate, and for the last 10 years as Lieutenant Governor and now Governor. And I'm the only statewide Republican office holder today, have been for a decade. When you're in the minority, I don't know any better. The only way to get things done is to put the politics aside and work together. I remember when I was in the Senate, Congressman Welch, then Senator Welch, State Senator Welch, was the pro tem. And he decided to make me chair, being one of only 3 Republican chairs in the entire legislature. And it wasn't because he agreed with me politically, but he trusted me to do the right thing. So as the others have said, it just means doing the hard work and being willing to let other people take the credit. If they came up with the idea, work towards the good idea, let them take the credit. I mean, and your constituents will see that you're doing your job. It doesn't mean that you don't have policy disagreements, but you can do it respectfully. And then you just move forward and either find a compromise or agree to disagree. And I've also, I don't carry a grudge. I move on. I don't dwell in those areas where we disagree. It's just not productive, because, the next day you're going to be working with someone that has the same type of approach that you may have been opposed to last week. So I've always tried to find common ground and focus on the areas where we agree throughout my entire time in public service.
Hey,
Great.
Heidi, can I amplify that comment that Phil made?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you mentioned in your introduction to me that I worked for former Governor Bill Weld. I was a member of his cabinet. But one of his favorite sayings was, "You never know where your next coalition is coming from." And I think in many ways, the big lesson I learned from him, and I think it's an incredibly important one today, is just because somebody's against you on whatever issue you're working on today doesn't mean there won't be somebody you really need to help get the votes that can help deliver something you do agree on later on. And the idea that you can't find something you agree with somebody on, I've never met anybody in public life I couldn't find something to agree with on. And that makes them part of a coalition if we're ever working on that issue. And I think the way Governor Scott phrased it was spot on.
That's great. This is just really refreshing. So I'm going to continue. We actually have a question from Annie in St. Albans. So I'm going to quote it here. "You all knew when you ran for governor that it wasn't going to be an easy job, but I'm sure you couldn't have imagined anything like what 2020 has thrown at you. Can you talk a little bit about what it's been like to be in your leadership roles over these past several months?" And this time, Governor Hogan, we'll start with you.
Well, it's a great question. And look, the three of us ran for office knowing that we were going to have some big challenges to tackle, and we knew it wasn't going to be easy. And, we knew we had our work cut out for us to kind of turn our states around and improve the problems and issues that we were dealing with. But I don't think one of us really imagined the situation that we found ourselves dealing with in 2020. I really had the honor to get to know and work even more closely with both of these two great governors over the past 8 months or so since this COVID-19 pandemic broke out. You mentioned in your introduction, I had the honor of serving as the chairman of the National Governors Association, and Governor Scott and Governor Reagan can tell you, we probably talked with other governors more often during that 8-month period than they have talked together in the past 20 years. And I think we had 53 different conference calls or Zooms like this with all the governors in America, including 30 some of them with the president and vice president. But we were dealing with a crisis where literally the lives of all of our citizens were at stake. And we had to make hundreds and hundreds of really critical decisions and gather the right information and listen to the experts and then make some choices and decisions that we never imagined having to make, that sometimes weren't always popular with everyone, but that were absolutely necessary to save people's lives, to keep our hospitals from overflowing, and to try to keep our economy moving forward so people weren't hurt economically. So it's been a very difficult and long year for everybody, for all the citizens in our states. And I can tell you that these governors here tonight, and frankly, my colleagues all across the country on both sides of the aisle, really stepped up during this pandemic and led in their states. And I'm just proud to be associated with them.
That's great. Governor Scott, how about you? I've seen you obviously work your steady leadership here, but how about you?
Yeah, over the years, my biggest concern was when the recession was going to hit. It's safe to say I wasn't expecting anything like we've seen in 2020 when I ran 4 years ago. I was the governor who ran on growing the economy. And little did I know I'd be the governor actually closing businesses down. It hasn't been easy for us as governors, but it hasn't been easy on anyone. We've all had to adapt in our own ways. But from a leadership standpoint, one area we worked really hard at, and we worked hard at this beforehand. And one of the things I'm most proud of is the trust my team has built with Vermonters. We're one of the safest states in the nation, and that wouldn't have happened if Vermonters didn't follow the guidance my team has offered. If they didn't trust we were doing the things for all these things for the right reasons and building that trust, that it wouldn't have happened, because it's especially important during times of crisis. And I can't say enough about the team I've built, whether it's been, and I've had a lot of success in business, politics, racing. It's all a team sport from my perspective. And I look at, there's 4 C's that when I'm building a team. And the first one is a litmus test for me. They have to have character and integrity. If they have character and integrity, they move on to the next. The second C is competence. They have to be competent in the areas I'm asking them to serve. The third C is commitment. Commitment to my vision and commitment to Vermonters. And that's really important. But the fourth C is one that's really difficult to define, and that's chemistry. And it's just your gut telling you that they have the right stuff, the right qualities to make them part of your team. And without that chemistry, without them putting the team ahead of themselves, none of this would happen. So I'm really fortunate to have surrounded myself with people who are really, really talented and have done a lot of work. And I think that's part of our success here in Vermont.
Great, thank you. And Governor Baker.
Well, let me just reiterate a couple of things. First of all, Larry Hogan talked about how much time the governor spent talking to each other over the past 8 months. That's absolutely right. And those are some of the best and most important conversations I've had since the beginning of this, because it's kind of hard to understand or appreciate the fact that in many cases you're making what I would describe as least worst decisions when you're in the midst of something like this. And the people who best understand that are other governors, and those conversations were incredibly helpful. And Phil talked about the quality of his team. There's just no question that nobody could get through the job of being the chief executive of any state without a great team. And I think our team has performed miracles over the course of the past 8 or 9 months. And the final thing I'll just say is the biggest challenge with COVID has been the constantly changing nature of what we know. And one of the things that makes any big decision or any collection of decisions in public life complicated and difficult is how much information do you really have that you can count on? And with COVID, we were learning all the way through the months of, March, April, May, June, about what it was, how it worked, and how to combat it. And I think in many ways, we're still learning. And I think that whole process forces us into having to have a very honest conversation with the public, which, we were doing press avails every day for probably 3 or 4 months, and just talking to people about what we knew and how we were approaching it and how we thought the best way to deal with it would be going forward. And I can't think of anything that's created more sleepless nights for me in the last 5 years than this issue. And I'm incredibly grateful for the sort of resilience and the vigilance and the discipline that the people in Massachusetts have shown to all this. And I say that at the same time, recognizing that COVID come with some really brutal side effects. You can't go visit people. My dad's 92 years old, right? Lives in a congregate care community. I couldn't visit him for 100 days, okay, in the midst of all this. And I'm one of literally hundreds of thousands of people in Massachusetts who found themselves in the same space. No funerals, weddings, wakes, so many hugging. I mean, so many things that when you're in the midst of an event like this, that people desperately want to do to share that sort of moment of intimacy and the security that comes all this. And COVID's basically saying no. Yeah. And I really view it as one of the most insidious viruses I've certainly ever come across. And the best part about it, to the extent there's anything positive I can say, is watching the way the people of this state and so many others basically stood up and responded and worked with us to beat it back.
That's great. And you illustrate exactly some of the challenges that all of our people are facing, Governor. So Mary in Pittsford, Vermont, she has a question as well. Politics at the national level seem to have sunk to name calling and a divide and conquer mentality. And you've talked about that. I'm worried that style of politics is starting to seep into our states and local communities. What can we do as individuals to turn this around? And again, this was Mary in Pittsford. Governor Scott. What
You know,
can we do as individuals?
throughout my political life, certainly as governor, I think the most important thing each of us can do is just treat others with dignity and respect. Treat others the way we want to be treated. It's pretty easy when you think about that. We desperately need better role models in this country, in our lives, because we have to realize, our kids are watching and they want to be just like us. And that's not just true for people like us in positions of power, but it's true for everyone in everyday lives. I remember back when I was in my heyday, when I was racing a lot, I was developing a fan base. And I went up in the stands one day, and there was a kid there that wanted to meet with me. And I'd done pretty well the week before. And I was talking with him. He's probably 7, 8 years old. And he told me everything that I'd done on the track. He talked about what I said in Victory Lane. I won the race, and he told me exactly what I said verbatim. So he was watching me intently, and I thought, man, I have a responsibility here because he's watching me and wants, if I'm running clean, if I'm, how I'm treating other drivers and so forth and so on. And I thought, here's a responsibility I wasn't counting on. I just wanted to race, but now all of a sudden I have this responsibility that someone wants to be like me. It was really, it was a really telling moment for me. And when I went, I got up and left him, and I was going back, and I looked back at him, and he had I'm the number 14. He had the number 14 shaved in the back of his head. And that's how committed this kid was. So I thought, this is important. It told me I've got to act the same way when nobody's watching that I would when I'm on center stage, because you never know when someone is watching you and again wanting to be just like you.
Governor Hogan. Sorry.
Well,
Good luck following that one, Larry.
Bill, if I could, I would carve a number 14 into my head, but I'm not sure anybody would notice.
How about a tattoo, Larry?
Yeah, maybe a tattoo.
Man.
Yeah, but so look, I think we talked a little bit about this in some of the earlier questions, and I think this is one of the most important things for us to address in America, and that is that our politics has gotten so angry and divisive, and it's Washington is worse. I think we would all agree, is there's divisiveness and dysfunction, and it's hard to get anything done. But it's just in some cases a matter of civility, and it is creeping into our state and local politics as well, and into the public discussion. And I think most people are completely fed up with it and frustrated. And look, we always have been passionately, arguing for certain positions. We're not going to agree with the other side on what's the best solution, but it wasn't always as angry and divisive as it is today. And we have to do something about the civility, the level of lowering the temperature with this debate, because my dad served in Congress back in the 70s, and I remember, he was a Republican who would go down and passionately argue something on the floor against one of his Democratic colleagues, and then they would go have a beer together or go have dinner together. Families were friends. And now it seems as if there's too much just, you have to attack the other side and demean them. And I don't think that's the way for us to get anything done in politics. I think the way to be successful, and I think what most people want, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or independents, they want, I think, the kind of leadership that Governor Scott and Governor Baker have been so good at. And that is, you don't see angry rhetoric. You don't see them name calling. None of us have gone about the way we take our job seriously, the way some people are in politics on both sides of the aisle. And I think it's why people are rewarding us with, I think the three of us collectively have the highest approval ratings of all the governors in America. And I think it's because not just this particular policy or this success we had on this issue in our very democratic states, I think people are rewarding us and appreciating the way we go about respecting each other and being willing to work together with everybody and listen to everybody. I think we need more of that in politics today.
think we've lost Governor Baker. Why don't we go on to, I'm
I
sure
can tell you what Charlie was going to say.
he might be he might be putting a 14 in the back.
I
of
think
his-
he's shooting his head right now.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we go to a question from Eric and we can get back to Governor Baker on that. But this is a question from Eric right here in Vermont. Can you name a couple? Oh, this is a good one, actually. Can you name a couple of political role models of yours, one from either party, and how they have shaped your approach to governing? Governor Scott.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. I think, first of all, I admired John McCain throughout my political life. And even though I never had the opportunity to even meet him, I watched his ability to work across the aisle, and that always inspired me. I went to, again, I never had the opportunity to meet him, but when he passed away, he decided, he orchestrated his whole memorial service. And so I went, I was invited, and I decided to go. And I listened to both President Bush and President Obama speak at his service, both of whom beat him when they ran. John McCain ran for president. Both of them did, but he's the one. He asked them to speak at his service, and I thought that said a lot about the man. It's just incredible what he went through, what he sacrificed for our country, but also the way he handled himself. It was always, he's so independent and again, fiery, but at the same time committed to his point of view. So I thought it was important to go, and he was one I thought I admired him and wanted to follow his footsteps in some respect. For Democrat, it's definitely a good friend of mine, Senator Dick Mazza, who is a very powerful Democrat in the state Senate and represents Grand Isle. And when I ran for the Senate and got into the Senate, I didn't know him before, but he took me under his wing and taught me, how to treat people, how to get things done, and so forth. And I learned a lot from him. And when I decided I was going to, after 10 years, that was going to be about it for me, public service, and I was going to go back to business. And he talked me into running for lieutenant governor. And he said I was the right person, the right time to lead the Senate. And he said, I will do anything you want. I'll raise money for you. I'll go out and publicly support you. I'll do anything I can to get you elected. And I remember the Republican Party was running in a very contested primary at that point in time, and he decided that to support me. And somebody from the Republican Party called me and said, "Hey, that's great. Dick Mazza, very powerful. You'll need him in the general election, but you're running in a Republican primary. You might want to distance yourself from him right now because you could lose the primary by your association with a Democrat." And I thought about that for about 15 seconds. And I said, if I have to turn my back on someone who I have so much appreciation for, so much respect for, then this isn't worth it to me. I just don't want to do it. So I took his support. I won the primary, and he has not left my side since then. And he has supported me in every single election I've had since. And it says a lot about him, but also a very powerful Democrat supporting me. And I talk to him almost on a daily basis.
Welcome back, Governor Baker. We're in the middle of a question regarding who you admire, politicians you admire on both sides of the aisle, a person who is a role model for how you govern. So we're going to go to Governor Hogan right now.
Well, thank you, Heidi. I mentioned earlier that these two gentlemen that I'm sharing this Zoom with today are two of the people I most admire in politics today. When you talk about role models from either party, well, it's hard to narrow it just to two. I mentioned earlier, my dad was in Congress in the 70s, and I learned a heck of a lot about integrity and public service from him. He was the first Republican on the House Judiciary Committee to come out for the impeachment of Richard Nixon. And so I admired his willingness to do what was right for the country and not just, do what was right for him personally or for the party. But I would say the two I most quote the most often and look up to that had kind of an influence on me from both sides would be Ronald Reagan, who I got involved in as a young college kid in his campaigns. And I just liked his hopeful, positive outlook, his positive vision for America, and the way he did such a great job of communicating and reaching across the aisle, like we were talking about earlier. He had a nice demeanor about him. He was very civil with people on the other side. He had that great relationship with Tip O'Neill when he was Speaker, and he got things done with the Democratic Congress. So he's somebody I admire greatly as a Republican president. I also have a great deal of admiration for John F. Kennedy, who I quote all the time, and Charlie mentioned earlier. I use that same quote quite a bit. He said, "Let us not seek the Democratic answer or the Republican answer, but the right answer." He talked about, sometimes party loyalty demands too much, which I quote all the time as well. And they're just two leaders from two different parties, but who had some admirable character traits that I looked up to and hopefully tried to learn from.
Thank you, Governor Hogan. And Governor Baker?
Well, I guess I'd say simply that I think Ronald Reagan was the first president I voted for. He has a lot to do with why I became a Republican. And I think people forget that while Tip O'Neill, who was from Massachusetts and the Democratic speaker, and Ronald Reagan was the Republican president from California, those folks used to get together all the time and trade stories and talk and in the end, make important deals. Part of the reason our Social Security system in this country is solvent these days is because Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan made a deal that was a difficult deal for both sides, but they felt it was in the best interest of the country and they did it. And I think that's one of the more important elements of public life that in many respects has been lost.
That's great. So, governors, this is my question for you, given what we've been discussing and how it is. I've been in this for 14 years, and it seems that this division is obviously more and more and more heightened each year. And so and I'm an eternal optimist, so I try to do that. But I'm actually curious as to how do you believe we can get through this and get to another point beyond this polarization? Do you think we can do it in the foreseeable future? And how do we get through this as a nation? Get back to I'm sorry, Governor Hogan, why don't we start with you again? I'm sorry.
I'm an eternal optimist as well. And while I understand how some people may not feel as if we're ever going to get back to any sort of normalcy, I'm hopeful that we will, because I think it's what most people want, as I said earlier. And there was a group called More in Common that did a survey that said 78% of the people in America are kind of fed up with the divisive politics, disgusted with both sides, and they really just want pragmatic problem solvers elected to office who are willing to work together, like the three of us. And so I think there are so many people that want this, but it's not going to be easy because it took us a long time to get this way. You mentioned in your introduction, I ran for governor. I started a nonpartisan group called Change Maryland. It had just as many Democrats and independents as Republicans, and we focused on issues that we cared about, like turning our economy around and putting people back to work, and not focused on divisive issues. And I've recently started another organization called An America United with the very same principles about, how do we have a more civil dialogue in America and how do we bring people together? I think after this election is over with, regardless of the outcome, that both parties and all of us need to have a really serious dialogue about what direction we're going to head in as us as a Republican Party, but as a country and both parties. How do we go about fixing what I think is this broken politics that most people are fed up with? And I'm hopeful, but it's going to be a lot of hard work by all of us.
Yeah. Governor Scott, how about you?
I think we have to look at history. We've been through a lot as a country before, but we've always found a way to get back on track and bounce back. I think about previous generations and what they've had to confront. I think about my dad, who served in World War II. He was a truck driver by trade from Vermont. Entered the service, was a tank operator, and was in the D-Day invasion. And then when he was on his way to St. Lo, France, hit a landmine and was severely injured, lost both his legs, spent 2 years in Walter Reed Hospital recovering before coming home. And I think about what they faced, what they had to overcome, and how much harder that was than what we need to do. We desperately need to come together. The good news is, I truly believe most Americans, as has been said by both Larry and Charlie, most Americans are in the middle. They just want solutions, but the extremes on both sides suck up all the oxygen. So I think there, as you can see from both Governor Hogan and Governor Baker, there are those of us who are more pragmatic, and we just need to make sure our voices are heard and to lead by example. And I think that's part of the answer.
Great, thanks, Governor. And Governor Baker, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't need to repeat what my colleague said. I'll just say that Governor Scott, Governor Baker, and Governor Hogan are three of the more popular governors in the country. And if you look around America, you'll discover that most of the governors who seem to do well with their electorate tend to be people who can work with everybody and who focus more on the work and a little less on the noise. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's a function of the fact that that's really what most people are looking for. And I really do hope, and we're a country that is, both Larry and Phil said, has gone through some very difficult times over the course of the last 220 or 50 years here. I mean, people do respond. And do we have challenges? Of course, we always have. And I believe in the American people, and I believe we will find a way to rise above a lot of the stuff that has made public life and governing so complicated over the course of the past few years. I do believe that.
Great, that's great. So thank you all very much. This has really been a breath of fresh air for us and for me. I wish everyone in public service had sort of the outlook and style as the three of you. And I think we'd have a lot of success in this country if we did. Before you go, I do want to give each of you a chance to leave us with some final thoughts. So why don't we start with you, Governor Baker?
I think my final thought is I want to see Phil Scott get reelected on November 3rd. But in addition to that, I would just say that part of the reason I want to see Phil get reelected is I like him and I think he's a good man, but I also believe he does get up every day worrying about what's in the best interest of Vermont and Vermonters. And he does work across the aisle, and he's got a whole career full of that. And I think in this day and age, especially, most people are interested in supporting people who can get things accomplished and don't judge you purely by who or what you're against. And I think in many ways, Phil has demonstrated time and time again over the past, 6 years now, that he is somebody who.
It's only 4.
He is somebody who. Sorry, I'm just planning ahead there, bud. But he's one of the guys. He's one of those guys, one of those people who will make tough decisions, especially if he believes they're in the best interest of Vermont. And I really like to see him spend the next 2 years serving the people of your great state.
Thank you so much, Governor. Governor Hogan?
Well, Heidi, thank you very much for moderating and for putting this event together. And I just want to thank all the people of Vermont who are tuning in and listening. And I'll second what Governor Baker said. We're not just on here because we're Republican governors. I mean, I really, like these two gentlemen, and I believe very strongly that not only does the state of Vermont need, Phil Scott to be governor for another term, but I think America needs to have leaders like Phil Scott and Charlie Baker reelected to office, because for all the reasons we've been talking about, this is what America needs: more people that are willing to get things done and work together. And have a more civil dialogue. So it's a great honor to be with both of them. And Bill, I wish you the best of luck. And we know that, you know, you're going to get in there and continue to do great work serving the people of Vermont.
Great. Thank you so much, Governor Hogan. And Governor Scott, we're gonna have you close it out for us.
Well,
Final
again,
thoughts.
thank you so much, Heidi. And you've conducted yourself in the same manner that we have in politics. So I thank you for everything you've done. And I want to thank Governor Baker, Governor Hogan. I think this has been a great conversation. This is what politics should be. People don't want political gamemanship. They just want solutions. And there are those of us who are elected who just want to treat people with respect, just like we expect in our everyday lives. So, and that's what they expect from us. And that's what I've tried to do throughout my time as governor, and that's how I'll continue to lead our state forward if Vermonters give me the honor of another term. So I thank all of you who have watched, and most importantly, don't forget to vote. Regardless of who you're going to vote for, don't forget to vote. It's a right we have, and it's an obligation we have. So we should all take it seriously. So again, thank you so much, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Governor Scott, and thank you all.